Thank you very much. How the black public schools evolved in Mississippi. 1798, the Mississippi Territory became a part of the United States. The black-white race question was clear. Blacks were slaves, whites were free. Indians were the enemies of war over the land. 1830, Protestant slaveholders decided to convert their black workforce to Christianity. 1865, blacks were made half-free. Indians had lost all the land. Whites had been devastated, but not defeated. 1866, the Mississippi Reconstruction Government established the first statewide public school system in America. 1875, a secret army led by former Mississippi colonels overthrew the Reconstruction government and reestablished control over the black workforce. 1890, the Mississippi adopted the first constitution in the history establishing white supremacy and black inferiority as a legal and official system. The secret of longevity for the 1890 Mississippi Constitution is how divided and localized it established political power in Mississippi. 1948, the Cold War demanded change. International pressure required the United States to integrate the armed forces in order to keep the peace around the world. The display of white supremacy and the black inferiority around the globe did not make for good publicity. 1948, the NAACP filed a federal lawsuit for equal pay for black workers The main reason for white supremacy and black inferiority was to maintain a low-cost workforce. Mississippi acted immediately. A statewide meeting of all policymakers was held in Jackson, and the very next week, the reason I'm going so fast, I only gave you 10 minutes. The speech is about 12. Governor Field Wright, the state attorney general, the president of the school board, the superintendent of education were the only speakers allowed at this special policy meeting called the 1 week after this lawsuit for equal pay. Governor Wright presided and set the tone with his opening statement. If they win this one, then we will have lost control and the floodgate to black equality will be open. The case went all the way to the United States Supreme Court. The Supreme Court, which ruled in favor of Mississippi and against black equality in the South, and created the Dixiecrat Party and ran for vice president on a ticket with Strong Thumb of South Carolina. I'm just going to slow down and try to read it right. 1954 and 1955, the United States Supreme Court decision on black education in America nullified in America. 1956, the Mississippi legislature enacted a series of laws designed to nullify Brown. The compulsory school attendance laws were repealed. School districts were authorized to abolish free public schools. And more importantly, the school districts were authorized to appropriate state money to private schools to educate white children. School districts were authorized to enact classification laws, which gave authority to assign pupils to particular schools based on the educational needs and welfare of each child, the welfare and best interests of all the pupils, the health and the moral factors at the school and in the community, and any other factor which the school board may consider pertinent, relevant, or material in their effect on the welfare and best interests of the school district and the particular school. 1956, on the very same day that Mississippi passed these laws, which is 5 April 1956, the Mississippi legislature passed a law abolishing traditional and common law marriage and declared children born of common law marriage illegitimate. The abolition of common law marriage for the purpose of retaining white supremacy and black inferiority is clearly the most devastating thing to ever happen in America. It is the principal reason for the breakdown of the black family and community. 1962, James Meredith and the Battle of Oxford. 1963, James Meredith graduates from Ole Miss. 1964, the Civil Rights Bill. 1965, the Voting Rights Bill. 1966, the Meredith March Against Fear. 1968, the United States Congress launches the Great Society. 1969, the federal courts ordered Mississippi to discontinue its dual system of public schools. This decision was hailed all over the United States and around the world as a great victory for black equality and a great loss for Mississippi and white supremacy. It was exactly the opposite. Money decides the ultimate outcome of all controversies in a capitalistic society. Politics decides every money dispute. 1970, Mississippi submitted to the federal courts a plan for redevelopment of education. However, there was a point of information. There was no money to carry out the plan. Instead, Mississippi's door went. Massive resistance. Similarly, by Senator James Eastland and political and legal means in the person of Senator John Stennis. Everybody in the world knew that Senator Eastland was the most powerful Democrat in Congress. Few people knew that Senator Stennis was the most powerful and smartest politician in America. Mastermind of the Southern strategy that got President Nixon elected. 1 week after the federal courts ordered Mississippi to integrate its schools, Senator Stennis hand delivered to President Nixon a top-secret letter telling Nixon that he would introduce legislation to force school integration in the northern states unless the federal government backed off on requiring southern states to integrate in order to get the federal money provided in the 1964, 65, and 1968 integration bills. President Nixon immediately ordered the federal agency and the federal court overseeing the Mississippi integration cases to start proceedings. In other words, the federal government switched sides and joined the Mississippi plan to keep white supremacy and black inferiority in place in all of the United States. 1971, the United States Supreme Court ordered the busing of school children for the purpose of establishing racial balance. The powers that be in Mississippi made the decision to take the federal dollars and save their white children. The black education institution was totally destroyed, and the Mississippi black community completely devastated. 4 days before school opened in 1971, 121 buses arrived for 170 bus routes. Following the Mississippi plan to ensure no race mixing, all but 15 white children scheduled to ride buses to black schools were withdrawn from the Jackson Public School District and enrolled in private academies. The fees of poor whites were paid for by banks, churches, and rich whites. This pattern was followed in every county in Mississippi. Jackson Public School ordered the closing of neighborhood schools and the building of 2 education plazas to replace them. In 1970, Hinds County had 84 black community schools. They closed all but 8. The Mississippi black world would never recover. The Mississippi white world never missed a stroke. And in fact, a better world for its children was created. The Mississippi private academy system is the best in the world. There is not a white child in the state of Mississippi that does not live within 25 miles of a private academy. It would be wrong to think that the black leaders did not try to prevent this disaster. They did their best and were simply beaten down to the ground. In 1970, there were 168 black high school principals in Mississippi. In 1971, there were only 19, and they had no power, no policy-making authority. Every lower black school had been led by black principals. I tried for 40 years to get some of these black education leaders to write their stories. No luck. After all, the white children were pulled out of the black public school. Total chaos resulted. The federal government had agreed to pay for integration in Mississippi. Now, to take place, although all authorities knew that it was not going to happen. Mississippi would take the money for education, siphon off 60% of the money off the top, and do whatever they wanted with the remaining 40%. This has gone on now for over 40 years. After closing down the black school in 1971, busing must go on as required by the federal courts. Therefore, black children were all bused from all black communities across town to all black schools in all black communities. The 40 years result of busing when the children could walk to school, their community school. Every black knew every family that lived between their home and the school. When the black school was under the authority of the black community, every need to develop and maintain a good society was made available to the people. The white powers that be made the decision to immediately, I want to get this part right. The white powers that be made the decision that our children are not going to be allowed to socially mix with them blacks. They immediately provided an alternative for their white children. Nothing has been created or allowed to provide that social development for blacks. Mississippi can do better. God does not count our sins against us. Therefore, the reason He made Mississippi the best and the worst is to position it to lead the Western Christian world back to the kingdom of God. The Federal Education Bureau is the new political machine, replacing the old crop machine of Memphis, the Tammany Hall in New York, Pendergast machine in Kansas City, and the Daily machine in Chicago. The reason Arnold is the head of the federal machine is because he ran and mastered the Chicago Daily machine. 1972, a new concept entered public relations and publicity to make it appear that integration was happening when in fact it was not. Money, federal money, poured in along with federal money. Dr. Sanders, yesterday you said you were nervous. And everybody asked me if I was nervous. To my recollection, this is the first time in my life I ever been nervous about anything. But I consider this the most important occasion of my life. In 1972, a new concept entered public relations and publicity to make it appear that integration was happening when in fact it was not. Money, federal money, poured in along with more and more governmental officials. A whole new language developed. The black parents and community were completely removed from the decision-making process. And the black educators were pushed into the background. Lawyers and government bureaucrats became the principal makers of education policy. And they almost always made bad decisions. The chaos and the confusion by 1975 had been saturated by growing dissatisfaction among teachers. According to oral histories of the former white teachers, little or no teaching took place or effective learning in the classroom with black pupils. Almost all black administrators had been demoted or fired. Now was the perfect time for the lawyers, bureaucrats, and politicians to enrich themselves and secure their position and appease the courts and pull the wool over the eyes of the people. The attorneys on direction from the federal court negotiated a compromise settlement. The 1954 Supreme Court decision on school desegregation would not be enforced in Mississippi. The black lawyer for the plaintiff against the Jackson Public School recommended that the focus be placed on the unitariness of the school system and the question of desegregation be overlooked. More importantly was the fact that the same law firm which handled JPS school situation also handled the blacks in the Jackson Fire Department suit, the Jackson Police suit, and the Jackson City Government officials case. Money rules the day. The education of black children in Mississippi was quietly overlooked. And if anybody don't believe me, Harvard has done studies that document all of this completely. You know, they say, oh man, this is crazy. I mean, if you don't believe anything I'm saying, you can look it up. Money ruled the day. The education of black children in Mississippi was quietly overlooked by all parties, and high-paying position for a few black elites became the only thing that was considered. The Justice Department lawyer handling all four cases, a native black Jacksonian, described the compromise agreement as follows, quote, "This compromise on school administrative employment secured a commitment to hire black administrators. The truth, why I accepted this award." This one I got hanging around my neck. "To tell the truth and stop the lie. Mississippi and America had been so busy celebrating the lie and honoring the dream until they have had no time left to acknowledge the truth and deal with reality. The lie, the so-called civil rights movement, produced voting rights and integration of the races. The truth, the same people who had all the power in 1965 have all the power today and every day from then to now. The education of black children in 2014 is less available now than it was in 1974. The concept of integration was a lie and a fraud from the beginning and is now more so. On 26 December 2011, the front page of the Clarion Ledger had a story about the black breakdown of Detroit, Michigan, and the takeover by the true powers in Michigan, and the total lack of authority of the black officials. The impact of these realities have become evident in several cities so far, and Mississippi is not far behind. There is one notable difference that Mississippi blacks need to take note of. They are still paying the black officials in Detroit and in California and Pennsylvania and other places. When the acts fall in Mississippi, the paycheck is going to stop as well. Therefore, the black race in Mississippi had better start to get its act together, to begin to train up our children in the way they should go, like the Bible tells us. The whites had better watch out as well, because my God tells me that deadly dangers are lurking if serious steps are not taken to rebuild our moral character. There has not been a race riot in America since World War II, 1944 in Detroit, Michigan. If the moral character continue to decline in Mississippi, a race riot is certain to come in Mississippi and will spread like western forest fire across America. Only Mississippi can lead the mission to forestall these events, and time is running out. I hope I didn't use too much time, but the conveners gave me another 5 minutes.